Welcome. You are about to listen to a calm English story for learning and relaxation. This story is designed for English learners at B1-B2 level. The main story is spoken at 0.9 speed, slightly slower than normal speech, to help you understand more easily. At the end, you will hear a short part of the story again. At normal speaking speed. Relax, listen, and enjoy the story.
Every morning, before the town fully woke up, an older groundskeeper walked to his workplace on the edge of the city. The air was usually quiet at that hour, and the streets still felt half asleep. He worked at a large industrial site, surrounded by metal fences, storage tanks, and wide concrete roads. The place was built for function, not for beauty. Everything there was solid, heavy, and permanent. Near the main gate, where workers entered every day, there was a small fenced patch of grass. It was nothing special, just a forgotten piece of lawn pressed between asphalt and steel. Most people passed by it, without slowing their step or turning their heads. That was where the groundskeeper stopped every morning. Taking care of that small patch was not part of his job. His responsibility was to keep the territory clean and orderly. But for some reason, this quiet piece of land stayed with him. While others saw only concrete and metal, he saw a place that could still change. People saw the groundskeeper come every day. They noticed that he stopped at the same small patch of grass near the gate, even though his work usually kept him moving across the whole site. At first, no one paid much attention. The place looked the same from week to week, and nothing there suggested change. It was still just grass, surrounded by concrete, metal fences, and the constant noise of machines. Some workers wondered why he spent time there at all. Others assumed it was simply habit, or a way to pass the quiet moments of the morning. A few thought it was pointless. Among asphalt roads and storage tanks, the idea of growth seemed almost unrealistic. Many believed that soil pressed between steel and concrete had no strength left. They thought that nothing living could truly take root in such a place. The groundskeeper heard these thoughts without hearing the words. He did not argue. He did not explain himself. He simply continued to care for the ground in silence, doing a little each day, without expecting anyone to notice. The groundskeeper's work was slow and careful. He did not rush, and he never tried to do too much at once. Each morning, he brought water, removed small stones, and gently loosened the soil where it had hardened over time. Some days were easy. Others were not. There were mornings when the wind was cold, and the ground felt unresponsive beneath his hands. On those days, doubt arrived quietly. He wondered whether anything beneath the surface was still alive, or whether the effort was already too late. He had no way to know. There were no signs of progress, no visible reward for his patience. The patch of grass still looked ordinary, almost forgotten, pressed between concrete paths and metal structures. Yet he continued, not because he was certain of success, but because the routine itself had meaning. He had learned, over many years, that some things cannot be forced or hurried. They require steady care, even when there is no proof that it matters. So he returned each morning, doing what he could, and leaving the rest to time. Weeks passed, one after another, during the warm season. Morning followed morning, and the groundskeeper's routine remained the same. People continued to walk past the small patch of grass, on their way through the gate. Some barely noticed it anymore. Others remembered it only as the place where nothing ever seemed to change. Among concrete roads and metal structures, time felt different. Days were measured by work schedules, not by seasons. Most people were focused on tasks, deadlines, and familiar routines. The ground near the gate still looked unchanged. It remained calm, flat, and ordinary. If anything was happening beneath the surface, there was no sign of it. Some workers took this as proof that the effort had failed. They quietly confirmed what they had believed from the beginning, that nothing could grow there. The groundskeeper did not respond to these thoughts. He said nothing and explained nothing. Each morning, he simply stopped by the small patch of land and continued his work, as he always had. Near the end of the warm season, something quietly changed. It did not happen all at once, and it did not draw attention. One morning, the ground near the gate looked almost the same as always, calm and ordinary. But if someone had stopped and looked closely, they might have noticed small green shoots pushing through the soil. They were thin and fragile, barely taller than the surrounding grass. At first, it was impossible to tell what they were. They did not look like flowers. They did not promise anything specific. Most people walked past without seeing them. Others noticed the change only for a moment and then forgot about it. The groundskeeper saw the shoots as soon as they appeared. He paused, stood still for a few seconds, and nodded slowly. It was not a gesture of celebration. It was a quiet confirmation. He continued his work as usual, watering the soil and keeping the ground clear, allowing the small plants to grow without disturbance. Over the following days, the change became harder to miss. The small shoots grew a little taller and stronger. More of them appeared, spreading quietly across the patch of land near the gate. They did not turn into bright flowers, or attract attention with color. Instead, they formed a soft layer of greenery, low to the ground, creating shapes that felt natural rather than planned. The place began to look different. Not dramatic, not impressive, just alive. People passing through the gate started to slow their steps. Some looked down without realizing why. Others paused for a moment, surprised by the presence of something growing, where they had expected only concrete and metal. The groundskeeper noticed these small changes, but did not react to them. He continued his routine, caring for the land quietly, allowing the growth to remain simple and unannounced. As time went on, the small patch near the gate became part of the daily routine. People no longer passed it without noticing. Some slowed their steps without thinking. Others glanced down briefly before continuing on their way. A few workers began arriving a little earlier than usual. They stood near the entrance for a moment, holding their coffee, letting their eyes rest on the quiet greenery before starting the day. There were no conversations about who had created it. No one asked questions or looked for explanations. The space near the gate no longer felt like a place to rush through. It became a point of pause, short, quiet, and unplanned. Each morning, the groundskeeper passed through the gate as he always had, continuing his work without drawing attention to himself. By the time the warm season came to an end, the small patch near the gate looked completely different. What had once been thin grass and bare soil had turned into a miniature landscape. Low plants formed gentle layers of green, like a small forest underfoot, with their own shapes and quiet order. People passing through the gate began to notice it more often. Some smiled without realizing why. Others slowed down, surprised to see such life, where they had once expected nothing. No one remembered exactly when it had happened. There was no clear moment of change. The greenery had simply grown, little by little, until it was there. The entrance no longer felt empty. The surrounding space felt softer, more alive. Each morning, work continued as usual. People walked through the gate, carrying their routines with them. And near the entrance, the small patch of land remained, living quietly, where almost no one had expected it to.
You have just listened to this story at a slower pace, 0.9 of normal speech. Now, you will hear a short part of the same story again. This time, it will be spoken at normal speed. Don't try to understand every word. Just listen, relax, and notice how familiar the language feels now.
As time went on, the small patch near the gate became part of the daily routine. People no longer passed it without noticing. Some slowed their steps without thinking. Others glanced down briefly before continuing on their way. A few workers began arriving a little earlier than usual. They stood near the entrance for a moment, holding their coffee, letting their eyes rest on the quiet greenery before starting the day. There were no conversations about who had created it. No one asked questions or looked for explanations. The space near the gate no longer felt like a place to rush through. It became a point of pause, short, quiet, and unplanned. Each morning, the groundskeeper passed through the gate as he always had, continuing his work without drawing attention to himself.
Thank you for listening. If this story felt calm and helpful, you are not alone. Many people learn English better through real, simple life moments. On this channel, we share calm listening stories about everyday situations. Work, conversations, small decisions, and real-life moments. These stories help you feel more confident when speaking English in real situations. Come back for the next story. We will continue learning, quietly, naturally, step by step.